history of the 90s on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find.
Take the next left onto Swift Drive, then turn right onto Eglinton Avenue East.
Is Toronto's rock station, home to the best rock music on earth, and the daily Derringer podcast.
I'm tired of just looking at Mike Wilson.
No kidding, man.
Holy smokes.
You got an option.
Take the next right onto Eglinton Avenue East.
Mike Wilson, the ultimate Leaf fan here, and the Daily Derringer podcast. So, Michael, you're at game 80 down, 2 left to go. Let's start. Great idea. Would you ever do it again, seeing every Leaf game of the season?
Well, yeah, as a fan, sure. But to do this for me the way I did it, no, because the expectations I've come across going throughout these 80 games so far, going to 82, would be the bar would be set so much higher, it would be tough to exceed it. So it would almost take away from it.
What would you say to somebody like, let's say Ryan and I said to you, you know what, Mike? Great idea. We're going to quit our jobs and we're going to do this next year. Would you say good idea, bad idea?
Great idea.
Yeah?
Absolutely. If you can do it, I get asked.
Continue on Eglinton Avenue East for 4 kilometers.
Every arena when I speak to somebody about this, first thing about is the cost. How do you do it? And I just said, look, and most of these guys, if they're in their 30s and 40s, I said, start putting your money away and plan it. You know, make sure you make friends in every city, so you got somewhere to stay, and they'll take you to a game, and maybe somebody will take you to a dinner. But it's very doable, and you'd be quite surprised at how many people out there that are actually doing similar type things. I told you guys last time I was on about the guys who've been in every sports franchise in North America's home arena, and I've met people time and time again that are going to every NHL arena, and what they do is they center it around the Toronto Maple Leafs playing, but they set this project out over a couple of years. So there's all kinds of people that do this, and they go to California, they do the swing out there, or they do the Western swing, or they go to New York area and do all the games there. So there's all kinds of people doing it, but doing it in shorter form.
I guess the second days of some of the back-to-backs must have been a little rough. When you're looking at the travel, you're doing it in the middle of winter, you're tired.
Well, I mean, I'm always anxious. I mean, I was anxious the first game of the season, going down the subway stop between King and Union, and I was thinking to myself,
fucking jackass.
imagine if I missed the first game after all this time.
Any cold, flu, anything that made you think, hey, I'm going to miss game 63?
I had one issue in Edmonton where I guess it's called pink eye, and it took a couple of days. So Debbie said, "Send me a picture." So I sent her a picture, and I look like a horror character.
That's
and
not fun.
And so I met a buddy of mine I used to play with in Aurelia, Jeff Green, and we had breakfast. And he goes, "Geez, well, you look horrible." And I said, "Yeah." So he took me to a walk-in clinic. I got all this medication for my eyes. I found out it wasn't contagious, so I had to wear my hat pulled down. They wore my ball cap to here, my hat over my head to try and hide it when I was going to talk to people that night, but that was the only end. So I stayed in that day and rested instead of going out and exploring the city.
What was, and I guess things were a little bit different then because they've kind of come to a head in the last week. But what was the feeling like in Edmonton? Was there already a sense of frustration setting in amongst that fan base? We know how much people there love hockey. They've got the best player on earth. It's got to be tough what they're going through.
Well, it is. And speaking to them, we could obviously feel their pain because we went through ourselves in the 80s and the 90s, what we've gone through. So it's the usual bickering, but they go to the game and they do have that sort of outside optimism that things are going to turn, things will get better. So they're typical type hockey fans, like everywhere you find it. They were complaining about management, they were complaining about this player or that player, and it was. I said to him, brother, you're preaching to the converted. Yeah. We've listened to this for years, so I know exactly what you're going through.
The only difference I would say was, although we had some great players, I don't think we ever had the best player in the world. You could place a lot of blame in Edmonton, but man, you can't blame Connor McDavid.
No, you can't. I mean, he's an exceptional talent. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime player that comes along. And the thing about him is the fact that he's got nobody to play with, and then nobody can keep up with him. So that is an issue in itself. But you have to remember, they got him not because of good management. They got him because they were terrible. Like a lot of those players and a lot of those picks.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not here to criticize another team, but I guess I will. The fact of the matter remains, after being on Bay Street for 40 years, the number one thing you do is when you look at a company is you look at management, and it starts right there. Number one, what the company does, find out what management does and what management's involvement is, how engaged they are, how much ownership they have in the company and all that. You start with every organization and you take a look at the worst teams in professional sports and you look at the top, Look at what's going on there. Look what's going on with our Toronto Blue Jays right now.
And even bad management, even bad ownership, will eventually fluke, and I mean in any business, fluke into a great young star employee. Do they keep that employee? That's the question.
Well, that's the whole thing. But they've got him locked up for the next 6-7 years, so they're safe on that regard. But at some point, he may go in and bang on the door and say, "What's going on here, guys? Like, I can't put up with this for the rest of my career." So
I can almost watching his face the other day was such a look of dejection. I can see him even going a step further and saying, "I'll quit the game if you don't trade me." I can see him almost pulling a Barry Sanders. If this was to continue, say, one more year, and because that's what Barry Sanders did, right? He said,
Sure did.
"Detroit, you trade me, or I'm not going to play anymore." And they called his bluff, and he said, "Okay, I'm not playing anymore."
That was something,
right? Wasn't it?
That's the first of its kind. I don't know if it ever come to that because I don't know Connor McDavid personally, but to your point, yeah, I mean, if a guy gets that frustrated and a guy's that passionate about the game and about winning, you could see it happening at some point, possibly.
Let's play a little game here, Mike. And these are, especially when we talk about the teams and the players, on the night that you saw them. You saw 80 Leaf games this year. So when I say who is the best team, it doesn't necessarily mean it's Tampa, who are the best team. But that night that you were there, that you went, "Oh my God, these guys, they're working on all cylinders." So let's start there. You have been to 80 Toronto Maple Leaf games.
Yep.
Every arena in the National Hockey League. 40 now at the Scotiabank Arena. The best team you saw play?
The best team I saw play was probably at the time was San Jose. And I think that was Toronto. I thought that was their best game that they'd played to that point. Their best game they played in the first half was against Tampa, believe it or not, the game they lost 4-1. They hit 3 posts in the first period and a couple bad goals went in the second period and they lost that game. But I would have picked San Jose for the first half of the season. The best team I've seen since that time was St. Louis. That first 6 minutes Toronto played in St. Louis was just like men playing against boys, the way they dominated. And that's when they're in that role, when they're in that long winning streak. And look where they are now. I mean, there's a team that was in last place in January and is now fighting for the division title.
Incredible, isn't it?
And that team, they had it all. They had toughness, they had skill, they had goaltending, they moved that puck. Like, they were absolutely the pro example of what a hockey club should look like that night. And I was just, my head was just spinning watching this.
Worst team. Who did you say this is an AHL squad?
Believe it or not, now they're in the playoff fight is Dallas right at the beginning of the year. But I'd have to say the last time was probably Buffalo. And even though they just beat us twice, was Ottawa. If you look at that team, like, there's no reason to try to show a loss of that club twice.
Good point. All right, 80 games in. Best town. What was the best city you traveled to?
Well, this is good. This is funny for me. I was thinking about this on the way down because I knew I was going to get asked. Here I am at the best rock and roll station in North America, and I'm going to say it's a country and western town, Nashville.
I knew you were going to say Nashville. I knew it. I would have put all my money on Nashville.
Had you been before?
I've never been before. I'm not a country and western. See, I'm not a country and western guy, so there was no reason for me ever to go there. But Debbie had stopped there a couple times. I'm back from Florida, and she goes, "Mike, it's worth seeing." And anybody I ever saw, it's worth seeing. And you get off the plane, and you're walking through the terminal. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden you hear music. And I go, it sounds like some guy. There's a guy playing live at 9 o'clock in the morning in a little bar. And all of a sudden you go to the hotel, you walk downtown, and like 10 o'clock in the morning, the windows are open, the sun's shining. That's still a little cool, but everybody's walking around. And here you have this thing encompassed where you have at one end the football stadium, at the other end you have Bridgestone, the arena, and in between are all the clubs and the bars and the restaurants. And every bar you go into, it's like 3 or 4 levels, and every level there's music being played. And it starts like at 9 or 10 in the morning and goes till 2, 3 in the morning. Awesome. And it's non-stop. But the thing about it is you don't feel, even though the hotel rooms can be a little bit pricey, if you're looking at $200 or $300 to stay close to town, to eat and drink and move around, there's no cover charges in any bars. Because you're dealing with so many tourists and so many people visiting, it's very upbeat and it's very friendly. You walk into any place and you walk in, like the stages are half the size of this desk and there's 4 guys up there playing. And it's just really something. And you know, whereas Las Vegas, everybody I would pick Las Vegas. In my estimation, and the people I've talked to go there, it's become more of a high-end resort where you just feel like you're getting gouged everywhere you go because you know you can gamble anywhere now.
Yeah, true. Good point. Worst town. What was just depressing, especially in the middle of winter?
You know what? I didn't, because this was a new experience to me and I'm trying to find people. I really haven't. I don't want to take the chicken way out and not pick a city. But
just go Buffalo.
Yeah.
You just the Buffalo's always the easy answer.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true, you guys. I guess
Well, especially in the winter, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just, it's a cold January day, Tuesday.
Well, Edmonton wasn't exactly shorts and sandals, let me tell you that much. When I was there, and Calgary was the same. It was very cold when I got off that plane in Calgary, I'm telling you, it was pretty cool.
What fans impressed you most?
In 200 meters, turn left onto Sutherland Drive.
Every arena, like you go to the Prudential Center in New Jersey, they have no chance of making the playoffs. And I always sit in the upper bowl of every arena, the last or second last row. And the fans up there are passionate. And hockey fans in all these arenas, you find out throughout North America, are
Take the next left onto Sutherland Drive.
But the loudest fans were in Las Vegas, but they've been spoiled. Let's see how good they are if this team's not making the playoffs. And they're all screaming. They're a little bit obnoxious, and they've got that kind of cocky attitude right now. So, they were very loud. But where it really gets interesting is out west. San Jose impressed me. The most sophisticated crowd I experienced sitting around me was St. Louis, because there's an expansion team. They know the game. They understand it. They appreciated good plays. They appreciated good hockey. They appreciated good players. So that was very impressive for me to see. And, of course, all the original 6 teams. I didn't like going to Boston. If you had to pick one place, that's the one spot, because you just always think that something bad is going to happen with
that's
them.
the truth.
And, our first game we played there, the Leafs were out shooting after 8 minutes. I was thinking, maybe this will change. We're out shooting 15-2. I remember looking at the scoreboard, and I was thinking, and by the way, they cheat on the shots on goal in a lot of
In 500 meters, turn right onto McRae Drive.
In favor of the home team.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Always. And I've questioned a couple of the media guys, and they always laugh. And they say, well, yeah, it's like the Mario assist in Pittsburgh all the time. All of a sudden, he wouldn't be on the ice sometimes and have an assist. But, but, all this stuff is going on. But then all of a sudden, those couple goals went in, and, disaster strikes.
There was great rare cooperation between Rangers and Devils fans the other night, and they traditionally hate each other, but together started chanting, "We both suck," which was kind of nice to see. Okay, and I'll put it myself under the worst fans. It was pretty sad to see some of the Islander fans in that first game back for Tavares.
Oh yeah, I guess that. Okay, I guess if I had to pinpoint that, they were the worst. If you've never been on Long Island, let's put it this way, there's nothing there. You think it's barren up in Canada where Ottawa is. That makes Canada look like the middle of Manhattan, like when you're going here, and that's how Coliseum is. It's brutal, and you have the hotel on the parking lot, and so what happens there, because there's nothing around at the tailgate. So I remember arriving, I got the early one to see, so they're all hooping and hollering. And
Take the next right onto McRae Drive.
It was like this outside, and they had that barbecue smell, you hear the loud rock music, you could hear the buzz of people's voices, so it was pretty cool, and I thought, this is great. But I go over to the one spot where they come out of the hotel and walk across the parking lot to the arena. And
Continue on McRae Drive for 1 kilometer.
Screaming and yelling. But this couple comes through, and they're wearing Tavares sweaters, and they just got lambasted with an obscenity-filled rant by these guys. So this guy standing beside me, he starts screaming at them, swearing at them. So I look at this guy, and I said, like, really, them? And he just started laughing, he walked away. And every arena I've been to, without exception, for the pregame warm, I always check the pregame and warm up. I go and take a picture, send it to Deb. Deb sends it on, it's put out on our social media. There's from center ice to around the arena in the Leaf end, where they're skating, there's 10, sometimes 15 rows of Maple Leaf fans. This night on Long Island, I saw maybe half a dozen Leaf fans in total.
And I think a lot of us noticed that even from what we saw on TV.
It was unreal. And when the Leafs come on the ice, the roar, see, that rink only holds 13,500. It's a low ceiling, so it's loud. And they started on Tavares. The Leafs first stopped when JT came out. They started with all the screaming and the swearing, and they didn't stop. Like the whole 15 minutes, they were screaming the whole game. So there's these guys beside me, and I wrote about this. There's these 4 Yahoos beside me, and they're big guys, and they got double-fisted the whole night. And they're looking at me because they don't know how to take me, because I don't wear Leaf stuff. I just have my ultimate Leaf fan. And so they're kind of looking, who is this guy? So when the game was out of reach at the end, I looked at the guy beside me, and I said to him, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah, sure. And he was all happy, of course, and half in the bag. So I said, anybody in this building you think read a newspaper in the last month? And he went, I beg your pardon? I said, well, just let me give you a couple facts here. you do know your team is in first place. Probably the first time since, 2000 or maybe back to the 80s. You also do know that you're ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the standings. He kind of looks at me and I said, you do know also you have probably the best coach in the National Hockey League and you've got an iconic general manager? Mm-hmm. Well, doesn't any of that resonate with you guys to maybe ease off in some of the hostility towards...
In 200 meters, continue straight onto Merton Street.
To myself, exactly, you moron.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty amazing to see, and did notice the lack of jerseys. Well, okay, on that, we'll take out Buffalo, the Canadian teams, and say Florida. What arena had the most Leaf fans?
Continue straight onto Merton Street.
You know where there's a lot? There was a lot on the West Coast, which surprised me, was Anaheim. Now, in LA, San Jose and Anaheim, there was good pockets. Like there was the Canadian expats. These are all these people that get together and go to games, and Canadian teams come in. But when the Leafs come in, it's usually the biggest. Anaheim really surprised me. Like there was like sections of Leaf fans in that game. Also in Columbus, which is a great spot. It's one of those little hidden jewels that Debbie and I really had a great time there. And they got all the clubs and bars around the arena. It's a very clean city, great atmosphere, and of course you have the cannon, which scares the heck out of you when they score. Yeah. I almost jumped through the roof.
Continue on Merton Street for 2 kilometers.
And I thought I was going through the roof, but there was a real huge contingent. And outside of the obvious places like Buffalo, not Buffalo was big, but everywhere you go, there are fans. The only arena, as I said to you already, we just touched on it, was Long Island, where there was, because most of the people move their tickets to Leaf fans when they're coming in and recapture some of their costs of their seasons. But Long Island was in one spot where they didn't do it. But there are fans everywhere.
How big was the difference this week?
I laid up a little bit. They started, but then they
Was there more fans though? Come on, man.
There was more Leaf fans this
Second
time
time,
around, but it still wasn't like it normally is in most of these arenas. And there was lots of empty seats in Long Island, by the way. So for all these guys screaming and yelling, they don't even fill their arena, and their team's in second place fighting for first place.
You mentioned Nashville and the airport. What was the worst airport? Which place would you not go back to because the airport was so bad?
Well, Ottawa's not exactly. I got a 4.5-hour layover on Sunday, so that wasn't exactly a lot to do there. Tiny little spot.
Yeah.
But most of these, when I come out of these airports, I hit the ground running, and it's right to where the Uber spot is. New York is a pain because they send you way out to get Uber or Lyft. You got to walk about a mile to get to the spot where they pick you up. So that one's not. New York's always crazy. But I would say that Buffalo's picking on poor Buffalo. Buffalo's another one, but because again it's about a half an hour to get to the rink from the arena. But for most of them, I just hit the ground. I just head right to the spot to get a car and go right to where I'm going.
Is your intention to go to every playoff game this year too?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes,
so
it is.
You're getting 2 on the road, 2 at home.
Yeah.
To be sure now, and we
exactly.
know it's going to start in Boston. But didn't think of one wrinkle with your trip to Boston next week, and that is a fairly big event they hold every year.
Yeah, the Boston Marathon's next Monday. So, well, and that was checking because we book all these things. The whole season was booked back in June. But for the playoffs, we had to wait because of what they were playing. So about a month ago, when we started talking about this, she was looking at flights and then started booking hotels. We basically booked a week in Boston when it looked like that was probably being the probable opponent for Toronto. And since then, we haven't been able to book the flight because it still had a shot at second place. So now the flights have gone from $800 to a sale of $230, and now they're back over $400. When Deb checked last night, so she's going to be working on that over the next day or so.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. You're 20 years old.
Yep.
Okay. You are guaranteed locked in #1 draft pick. With all that you know in your experience this year, when you're talking about the team, you're talking about the players, the coach, the management, the city, the fans, the cost of living, all that factored in. You're the #1 draft pick. Fill in the blank.
Where do you play?
The so-and-so are pleased to select Mike Wilson as our #1 pick. Aside from Toronto, because you're a local guy, where are you going?
That's a great question. Most of these cities that I found, see, the problem is I'm surrounded by hockey people. And again, I'm not taking the chicken way out. I've said this 3 times now. So you have people that are passionate about you to begin with and about your hockey club. But I think a place, any of the original 6, we have to throw them out because that's an obvious spot. Chicago, I know, is a great place to play. Philadelphia is a great place to play if you win. LA is another good spot if you're winning. I mean, any spot is good if you're winning. But I would say that the one surprise place would be a place like Columbus.
You'd be happy to go to Columbus?
Because, I mean, you've got real ownership there. They have real hockey fans there. There is some real good history. One of the oldest arenas in North America, the Taft Coliseum, is on the fairgrounds in Columbus, and it's a phenomenal building. And that actually is where the Columbus Chill played, which led to these guys getting a National Hockey League team.
Unfortunately, Mike, they traded their pick with Edmonton, and you're going to the Oilers.
That's just, I knew you were going to say that. I knew that was coming. That's one spot.
Yes. Well, and we've seen it with different players. There are guys at that draft age, and then as they progress through their careers, who want to go to Arizona and they want to go golfing and they want to go to the mall and not be accosted and they want to live their lives. And then there are guys, and it seems that, funny to bring up Arizona, Austin Matthews appears to be one who is totally at home coming to a place like Toronto where hockey is far more than a pastime. It's a religion. And I would guess that different players would see that much differently. And you can see that there are players, like a guy like Brad Marchand. I don't see him succeeding in a place where hockey isn't big. You know, guys like that love playing the game, love being a part of the center of attention. Who's the biggest agitator you saw? Who drove you nuts on the ice?
Well, besides him.
Exactly.
Well,
that's what got me to think of it.
Well, I mean, the other part, and I mean, it's, you know, it's going to be another Boston Bruins, David Backus in Boston.
I hate him. I hate him.
Okay, here's the question.
And I do mean hate.
Here's I was going to make 2 points here. One, just going to Austin Matthews very quickly. The thing about him is that I was picking up around this year in the National Hockey League, by the way, when free agency comes up, I think it could be one of the biggest disruptions for the league as far as player movement, because you have an extraordinary amount of unrestricted free agents that are up, and teams, and there's a number of restricted free agents, but I mean unrestricted free agents that are up for new contracts, which leads to people going to be offering offer sheets. And the thought around the league early was that Austin Matthews would be targeted by Arizona, because when you make an offer sheet, it's a one-shot deal. You offer, and if it's over $10 million, it's all dollar amounts. You give up 4 first-round draft picks, and you have to own them. So the thought was that he is not as engaged to Toronto because he's from the States, he's from Arizona, so it wouldn't mean as much to him to play here as, say, Mitch Marner. Well, what you've seen since he signed that contract, I was told before that by guys around the city who says, no, this kid is wired in, he wants to win, he loves playing here, he wants to win a championship. And you can see the way he's been playing the last month or so, that fire's in his eyes. And as far as the second part, what do you want me to tell you?
David Backus.
Oh, David Backus. Okay, so here's the second thing I want to tell you is, this is what's so frustrating about the Toronto Maple Leafs. You look at the Boston Bruins outside of the top line. Name another player that can make the Toronto Club.
In 200 meters, turn left onto Yonge Street.
Good question. I think you mean forwards.
Forwards, yeah. Never mind defensive, forwards.
Well, you know what? I think they could use a Backus. He's a guy I can't stand. I'd be happy to have him on
But
my
again,
team.
would you see what they are? That team is built to win now. So do you give up? You're going to have to give somebody up that's got potential to keep this team competitive for the next few years in Toronto, because that's what the vision is, to look out. Who do you give up?
No, you see, and this is where, and it's what makes the back part of the game, the behind-the-scenes part, so interesting. I would have taken one contract to go, David Backus. But he's not one contract to go. He's current contract. So no, I don't even know if he would make the team. Because you're talking about a guy who, what is he, 30?
Yeah, he's in his 30s.
33.
He's been a healthy scratch sometimes. You watch him play.
Turn left onto Yonge Street.
He's a leaf killer. And y'all are.
For sure. That's why I hate him, Mike.
See,
one of many.
Oh, no, that's exactly right.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I get asked all the time, what is it about this club, why they cannot succeed with all this talent?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very, very good question. And if I had to pinpoint it to one thing, what I would suggest to you is the following. What you have to look at is the skill level of these players. If they've played at such an elite level since they've been young, they've been the type of guys, they always have the puck. They've never had to go and get it. And if they are on a team where the puck isn't with them, somebody's feeding it to them because they're the key player. Now you got this level of talent, they move in the National Hockey League, and they're surrounded by guys who are exactly like them. They were the star player from 6 all the way up. Those guys...
In 600 meters, turn right onto Heath Street West.
That's the sort of separation you have to have from the talent. We hear Mike Babcock preach this endlessly about don't let your work ethic outplay your talent, or your talent outplay your work ethic. That's the key thing. And once those players realize that and come to that realization, That's how they get better. Watch John Tavares. He's been the biggest surprise this year for me watching him for 80 games is the fact that most goal scorers, and this was maybe come to this realization of this theory I have, is you watch a player like him, he's as strong without the puck as he is with it. And 80, 90-point guys aren't usually, as a rule, from our days, John, going back, like that. They're the guys that are being fed and scoring. You watch this guy in the puck, he is tenacious, he goes after it, and he takes a beating, and he keeps coming back.
That he does. You know, they used to say that about Eric Lindros at the blue line.
Turn right onto Heath Street West.
He never had to.
Right, it's got to be difficult when you're playing at this level to learn new things, and that's what's being required of some people. One final question, because it's been such a big story. What about the development of William Nylander after the holdout earlier in the season?
I think it should be less than everybody. You don't want to miss. You got to remember, he didn't just miss the first 3 months of the season. He hasn't played since last April.
Continue on Heath Street West for 1.5 kilometers.
He didn't play for 7 months, and I don't care if you're skating with whoever. It's a much different when you're playing in game situations, and he missed all that. So it's still there. He's pressing. You can see his skating is back to where it was. His puck handling is almost back to where it is. You can't give up on him. I mean, everybody's talking about him being traded in the offseason. He's going to be the guy that's going to be moved. I think that'd be a mistake.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You got to stick with this kid. However, somebody's going to have to be sacrificed in the off season. Number one, they've got to upgrade the backup goalie. That's as clear as the nose on your face. That has to be done. Number one. They also have to do something on the defense everybody talks about. But you got to remember, Kelly Rosen, who I thought should have made the team at the beginning of the year, he was outstanding with the Marlies last year and should have made this hockey club. Borgman is another one I think that is good, but he gets hurt all the time. The two Swedish kids I think are up and comers also. The emergence of Dermot is also. So all those things are being factored into Dubas's thinking. But the problem is you get an asset like Nazem Kadri, who is being wasted, I believe, because he just can't get the ice time. I mean, there's a 30-goal scorer who'll be a second-line forward on any other hockey club.
And he's not the Nazem we've come to know.
Well, he can't because he's not getting the ice time. And this guy, so I think if you had to make a move, he could be somebody that could be moved. You have to make a decision between Johnson and Kapanen. I think Kapanen is an absolute star in the making. If somebody had to be sacrificed, even though I do like Johnson, you got Johnson and Kadri as sort of trading chips, I think, in the offseason. I think Connor Brown, unfortunately, is a hardworking guy, may have played his way off the team because the fact is he's making too much money. And at $2.1 million, you can almost have an Ennis, you can have a Petan, and you can have a Moore for almost the three of them for the price of one.
Yeah.
And those are the type of guys, and you notice the Leafs have been loading up on the Marlies with a lot of minor league acquisitions recently and bringing all these kids in. Because your start players make all the money, and the bottom six guys are the guys that are actually carry you through and keep you within the salary cap range. So I think those are all decisions that are going to have to be made. But there'll be some moves in the offseason regardless of what they do, because they have to, because you always got to keep upgrading. Because this is a win-now league, and the players are getting younger, the teams are all getting better, and it's the best professional sports league in North America, bar hands down, and there's nothing even close to it.
Well, great talking to you, buddy. We could go on all day about this team, about your trip. 80 games in, 2 left to go. Tampa Bay tonight in Toronto, and then Saturday night the Habs. Can the Leafs beat the Boston Bruins?
Yeah, sure they can. For all the reasons I just gave before, if these players realize the number one thing they have to do is be first on the puck, keep their feet moving all times, and the skill will take care of the rest.